Kleinn GM1500-734 train horn system on this 2016 Chevy Silverado. The first thing that we've done is we've taken all of the contents of the package that we've received and put them out on the floor, itemizing and cataloging all of the different parts, the bolts, the nuts, and the components themselves. We also took out the instruction manual and read through a first draft of it. And our next step is to take a look at our initial wiring and how we're going to run this system, where these mount points are.
This is an overview of all of the parts included with the kit, starting with the power, ground, horn, and switch wiring, pressure switch relay, tank fittings, electrical connectors, air hoses, brackets, bolts, heat shield, horns, tank, brackets, and compressor, along with the lines and compressor filters. Digging right in, the first part of assembly is connecting all of the various fittings to the tank. Prior to installing each fitting, application of just enough amount of supplied thread sealant will ensure that no air leaks through any of the fittings. Be sure to apply where the threads will meet the tank so a strong seal can form, preventing small leaks that can be a point of frustration on down the road. Hand tighten each of the fittings prior to a final quarter turn with the appropriate sized wrench. Looking at the supplied photographs from the instruction manual will help here, making sure each fitting gets placed in the right location. The first couple can be a bit tricky, as I quickly found out, but it doesn't take too terribly long to get the hang of it. Now we take the tank and attach it to the bracket. Find the 4 long bolts and apply anti-seize compound to the bolt threads. Anti-seize will help should you ever need to take the unit apart, and it will prevent any unnecessary rust and corrosion on both the bolt and the nut. Take the anti-seize bolts, washers, and gap post and hand tighten. This will allow for easier installation to the truck frame and provide movement of the tank prior to a final tightening.
So now that we've got our air tank dry fitted, what we're going to do now is put the compressor and dry fit it onto the bracket before we can get it and install it onto the frame assembly.
Using the 4 smaller Phillips head machine screws, apply anti-seize and install with the nut facing up. This will again make it easier to final fit the compressor when it is attached to the frame. Be sure that when you install each washer and nut that you do not over tighten these screws, as it may damage the rubber bushings which absorb vibration from the compressor while it is running. Hand tighten for now and final fit later. Time for the fun stuff. Mounting the compressor and tank is recommended to be a 2-person job. For this installation, we reached out to a local garage and rented a lift. All of the under chassis work was far easier to accomplish, and the fee was rather nominal. Slip the compressor on first, then grab hold of the tank, and it slides right in. Mounting the 3 bolts is next. Again, hand tightening and applying a liberal amount of anti-seize compound. The 3 top bolts can be a little difficult, and this is where having that second person really helps. Apply the washer, the lock washer, and the nut, and hand tighten. Once all bolts have been put in, it's time for final fit. First with the top bolts, and we work our way down to the bottom. Just 3 quick wrenches.
Alright, now we've got our compressor, we've got our tank mounted, so the next step is to install the horns. So we're going to go over here. Start taking these bad boys apart. So now we're at the part where we're going to be putting the horns onto the assembly so that we can get it on the truck. And the first thing that we need to do is take apart the train horns and out of the shipping packaging.
Disassembly of the horns begins by removing and unscrewing the 3 trumpets and setting them aside. Quick cuts to the temporary air lines is done in short order, and these can be discarded. Removal of the nuts that hold the horns in place is relatively easy. Do not discard this hardware, as you will need it to use for attaching the horns to the frame mounting bracket. We then connect the solenoid air lines between the horns and brass fittings, once again using our thread sealer. Reusing the hardware in prior steps can be quite the challenge. These guys are quite a hassle to reinstall, to the point where my camera operator had to give me a hand. Now that we've connected all of the air lines, the horn solenoid, and run the ground and purple wire properly, we attach the assembly to the frame of the truck. Use the shortage of the 2 bolts, hand tighten the trumpets, and we're complete. Prior to connecting the electrical, the use of a multimeter to check continuity and find the right ground can be quite helpful. At this point, we've run all of the power line from the engine bay down to the compressor location using zip ties. The right crimping tools and the right connectors, male and female, ultimately end up making the connection to supply power to the compressor. We repeat this process with the pressure switch, with one run going to the relay location and the other one going inside the cab. In order to get the purple wire and the yellow wire into the cab of the vehicle, we located the parking brake location. Using a zip tie, modified heavily, we pulled both of these lines through the boot and into the cab. We run the purple and the yellow lines along the A pillar into the driver's side fuse panel. Our next step is to then cut the wire to length. Strip to expose glorious copper. Connecting both the purple and the yellow line, we connect to a fuse tap that we purchased at the local auto store for a couple of dollars. After testing the continuity on the fuse panel, looking for switched power, we found a prime location on the fuse block. And just like that, we're good to go. We've got switched power. Put the cover back on. Reassemble the interior, and we're golden. 2 bolts underneath the dash panel, so we could place our switch here, connecting both purple lines together. There are a lot of locations to put the relay in the engine bay. We settled for next to the battery. Be sure to reference the instructions and make sure each of the wires are matched to the correct number on the relay. Final items to include would be connecting the air intake and the filter to the compressor, running the line along the cab, and then attaching with reverse Velcro underneath the wheel well under the bed. Connecting our air assembly, we start with connecting the female side to the hose and then the male side to the hose. We can now attach any air tool to this line. Now we need the quick connect mount, and we do so by attaching the brass fittings, hand tightening first, with a little bit of wrench action, and don't forget the protective boot, which prevents any corrosion or damage to the quick connect. Using a 3/16" drill bit and a 1/2" drill bit to connect the air line, we can now mount the quick connect underneath the passenger side rear wheel well. Using supplied bolts, tighten down. Then we run this line using zip ties and stickies, which are quite useful. Underneath the bed, we're using our air intake all the way over to our tank. Snip off the line, make it work. Make it work for our nut. Attach to the tank with one hand. Slide on the nut. Make sure it's threaded correctly. And we're done. Now that we got everything installed, it's time to give this puppy a little try. The noisemaker's definitely a lot of fun.
I would have done the washer, but I washed the fuck out of everything. Oh, you got fucking anti-seize on this shit. God
I can't see shit up there, so
yeah, just pull.
I can.
Do you want me to film you tightening? Just really putting in perspective the garage shows you've been watching, trying to film what the fuck's going on.
Is he overdubbing everything?
Yeah.